What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. This is 40 days, 40 nights. My daily live stream that I'll be doing 2 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 p.m. You can find me doing a live show every day, talking all the things I love. Sports, mostly. But this, I hope to be really a stream of consciousness for your boy EJ Stewart here. We're going to talk sports. We're going to talk all the things I love as well. So that may go into wrestling. That may go into hip-hop music. That may go into what we love with, obviously, Marvel superhero stuff, right? Like all those things I enjoy. So with this, platform, I feel like this will be the opportunity for me to really give you guys my most authentic self, which I think is what anybody would want, right? I don't have any bosses, right? Nobody's telling me what kind of show to do. Nobody's telling me what topics to talk about. Nobody's telling me how I got to say this way or that way. You're getting EJ in his rawest form. So this, to me, super exciting project. Again, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 a.m., 40 days, 40 nights. We'll be doing a whole bunch of shows. And this is, I think, no better time to launch than now, right? Because there's so much stuff happening. It really, in almost all the major pro sports, you got NFL wildcard playoffs, which, man, you want to talk about a wildcard weekend that was, I think, maybe the best one I can remember outside of that the wet fart that was last night's Sunday Night Football game. An absolutely remarkable wildcard weekend that I think will perhaps continue into this Monday night where you got a big game, Texans facing the Steelers in Pittsburgh, so that should be a fun one. But a lot going on, obviously, NFL playoffs. Also, you got a lot going on with the NFL coaching carousel. Big names on the market, obviously, with John Harbaugh leading the charge, but with some of the playoff results that we've had, maybe some more playoff results that may happen, could other big names be available? Could Matt LaFleur be a guy who's looking for a job after what happened on Saturday? We'll talk, obviously, about the NFL head coaching cycle. This is also MLB hot stove season, so you want to talk baseball. We're going to be talking plenty of baseball as well. Some interesting news coming down late last night about the recruitment of one Kyle Tucker. Also big news regarding Chicago, who had a big weekend on the football field. Also on the diamond, they signed Alex Bregman. And then we'll also talk about the latest going on with Cody Bellinger. So I'm really excited about this, man. I think this is, I've done live streams before. And for those who have never, checked out this YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, this is New Generation Media. This is essentially the kind of creative hub for not just myself, but my brothers. Me and my brothers, we are a team, and we put together podcasts every week. We have Sports Talk, we have Hero Talk, we have Imperial Broadcast, which is a Star Wars podcast. So we've been at this thing for a little bit. And if you come to our YouTube channel, you'll see the long library of videos that we've had, the past live streams that we've done. This is the first solo show I'm doing with this venture within New Generation Media. So make sure you check out those shows, man. You can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us, New Generation Podcast Network. Again, make sure if you haven't already, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel so you can get, obviously, every time we're going live, anytime we drop a video. And make sure you give a like and a comment if you're loving the content. So again, let's get this rolling, man. I'm just, again, super thrilled. I also want to say one more thing before we get this show going and talk about the NFL Wildcard Weekend. I want to say also a real big thank you to a lot of the listeners and callers from the Maggie and Perloff show on Infinity Sports Network. Obviously, a lot of folks who may be tapping into this live stream, they first heard of me or discovered me or learned who I was through listening to us, the Maggie and Perloff show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Infinity Sports Network for the last 2+ years. Maggie Gray, Andrew Perloff, two phenomenal friends and phenomenal hosts. they gave me an opportunity that was awesome. And one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about the opportunity was the opportunity to connect with you, connect with the listener, connect with our callers, connect with who we like to consider the weedos and coffee drinkers. I gotta find a name for the people who tap in on 40 days, 40 nights. We gotta get a name for this crew, this batch of crew that's gonna be coming in and rocking with us twice a day for the next 40 days. But I want to give a big shout out to those who have checked me out on Maggie and Perloff and have been, obviously sad to see the show and in its radio form in terms of the iteration of Infinity Sports Network, given the Westwood One merger. And now there's new shows, obviously, throughout the entire lineup. I really want to thank you guys for rocking with us. You guys have been super supportive. The kind words have been awesome. And like we said before, and I know Maggie has said it, that was that iteration of the show. I'm sure there'll be another iteration of the show. So like we've said before, stay locked into the Maggie and Perloff social media pages. If you want to know any details about what they're going to be doing next or what, the future holds for this show itself, stay locked in. This what I'm doing here is not any way reflective or anything that's going to change anything that's happening with the Maggie and Perloff show. So that's just a little bit of house cleaning there. But I want to thank you guys for checking out Maggie and Perloff all this year. Thank you guys for supporting me enough to actually check out this live stream. And shout out to also my WFAN listeners. Of course, I host locally in New York City with WFAN, and you guys have been super supportive, and I've gotten to meet a ton of awesome people through there as well. So I want to give you guys a shout out as well. And then let's just enjoy this ride, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. I feel like this is going to be one of those things. This is one of the hardest is not the right word. But it's definitely one of the most ambitious projects that I've done. And I'm really excited to get the ball rolling. We're gonna get it off here, man. So shout out to everybody. Let's get it rocking. So let's start with Wild Card Weekend. Whew, that was a weekend. That was a weekend. To me, I think when I think about Wild Card Weekend, and it's not over. Obviously, we have a Monday night game. But the biggest takeaway I have is this was, in my opinion, the perfect microcosm of the entire football season. Anybody can win. Anybody can get beat. So we watched 5 games in which the parity that dominated much of the regular season, where we saw a lot of no one really able to kind of take firm grasp of looking like the top team in the NFL. We saw some of the past juggernauts that we expect to see in the playoffs every year falter, like the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Baltimore Ravens. We saw teams rise up that we did not expect, like the New England Patriots, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, like the Chicago Bears, newcomers coming into the fray. This weekend really represented everything we've seen. These were close games. These games came down to the wire. And what I saw were a bunch of imperfect teams. To me, the biggest winner this weekend was the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. Not necessarily because I think those teams are awesome, but I think if you're the Seahawks or you're the Broncos, you watched that weekend unfold and you probably said, we're going to be okay. We don't see a dominant team that we should be really fearful of. This was not like the college football playoffs, where anytime a team sees Indiana plays and goes, oh snap, that team might be a problem. Like, everybody keeps talking about how my Miami Hurricanes are in big trouble. People were talking about how Oregon may be in big trouble, and they certainly were when they finally took on the Indiana Hoosiers after what they did to Alabama. This is not that. The NFL playoffs is not that. I don't think it's going to be that. And again, this is what the season has been. There are a lot of imperfect teams. There isn't a clear favorite, and there isn't some red hot team that's coming up from kind of out of nowhere to really challenge the Seahawks and the Broncos in a way that I think they should be fearful of. Now, do I think those teams are a lot to get to the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. They are also 2 extremely flawed teams. They're a reflection, really, of also the NFL season. Like, the fact that those are the 2 teams, number 1 seeds in both teams, where you watch games where they look comatose for a half. The Broncos play sometimes 3 quarters, both in Seahawks as well. They play 3 quarters, but they look comatose, and then they come alive in the 4th quarter. Like, they're also a reflection of this NFL season. But to me, like, they're the biggest winners, because I think if you watch these games, they were highly entertaining. They were classics, some of the better wildcard games you'll probably see But in terms of, should I feel fear? Should I fear, like we can't go out there and beat these guys? Or do I feel, there's a team that's on our block and we're going to have a lot of trouble? No, I think that if you're one of those teams, you probably feel pretty good. You're like, okay, fun weekend, exciting weekend. There was some good football. There was some bad football. But there is not a juggernaut sitting in the wings, sitting in the loop. And I think that if you're the Broncos and you're the Seahawks, you got to feel good about that. So, for me, I'm not pressed if I'm those teams. I will say, as a football fan, forget about those teams. That's the kind of stuff you want to see. Exciting, thrilling, 60 minutes of football where you can't turn the TV off because you don't know what's going to happen next, and one play could flip the entire game. We saw that in most of these games, except for that blowout, or I guess how you call it blowout, the Patriots and Chargers. It definitely was a snooze fest, I would call that. Besides that game, one or two plays can absolutely flip the entire script. So this was, again, a weekend that showed really what the NFL has been all about this year, which is super parity. Is it super great for the league? I don't know. I think it is. I saw someone, and shout out to Rich Eisen. I have no beef with Rich Eisen. Obviously, he was a colleague at Infinity Sports Network. But I saw someone post a tweet from Rich Eisen from, I think, December, when he said, people are, celebrating now, but trust me, they're going to miss Chiefs magic when the playoffs come around. They're going to miss watching Patrick Mahomes make these plays. They're going to miss Travis Kelce. They're going to miss all the stuff that goes with the Chiefs and goes with wanting to watch the Chiefs, whether you want them to win or whether you want to watch them lose. I didn't feel that. I'm sorry, not me. I not for 1 second watched those games and thought, you know what would make this better? Taylor Swift in the booth. You know what would make this better? Crooked refs giving the Chiefs every call. I actually really enjoyed the fact that we were seeing some new blood, the fact that we were seeing some teams in different spots. Obviously, some quarterbacks are now coming in to their own in a major way. Drake May is going to be advancing to the divisional round. You're going to have Caleb Williams advancing into a divisional round. So I was not someone who was sitting here talking about thinking, oh man, this football is kind of up and down. It's kind of whatever. I miss the Chiefs. I miss their greatness. I miss their execution and all that stuff. That was not me. That was not me at all. So I think it is good for the NFL. It's a good long-term. I guess that's a long-term answer. But I think for this weekend, I think one of the things that was so exciting about this weekend was that we were seeing new characters in the fray, new stories being built. Like Caleb Williams doing what he's doing. That's a new storyline that now we can follow in the NFL. Even obviously they lost, but like Bryce Young, is he possibly the answer in Carolina still? He's become really, I know my friend Andrew Perloff called Derek Carr the Bermuda Triangle of football, of quarterbacks, and that, the question of is he good is something that nobody really can answer. I feel like Bryce Young's kind of becoming that Bermuda Triangle. Is he good? I still don't know. I mean, there were moments in that game against the Rams on Saturday where he looked awful, and I was like, man, like this team looks like they're pretty much all ready to go, except for the fact they have a quarterback. And then he was making throws that were just like if it was Josh Allen, if it was Patrick Mahomes, you would have said, man, that was an awesome throw. I mean, so I think the fact that we actually were getting new matchups, new teams, new players, I think that all ended up being really great for the NFL. I think that's what also led to a lot of the fan excitement in the game and throughout these games. So it was a ton of fun. We're going to break down all these games, and then we'll get to all the other stuff that happened over the weekend. So I want to kick this off with, let's go with the Eagles, man. Let's go with the Eagles, because Eagles get sent home by the 49ers. The score was 23-19, I believe.
Go Birds!
It was not a good day for the Birds. It wasn't a good day on the field, where you saw an offense that looked like it's looked all season. And the best word I keep using to talk about the Eagles offense is remedial. It just looks basic. It doesn't look like they do a lot of stuff to get easy throws, to make easy completions, to make easy plays. Everything looks very difficult. And to me, I know we can talk a ton about Jalen Hurts. And I'm also not going to sit here and tell you Jalen Hurts played this phenomenal game yesterday. I thought he was okay to average. He was fine, I thought. But definitely not the Super Bowl Hurts that we saw in the Super Bowl last year or 2 years ago against the Chiefs in Arizona. or some of the other, signature playoff performances we've seen Jalen Hurts. That was not what we saw on Sunday at all. But to me, my biggest takeaway watching the Eagles lose to the Niners, we'll talk plenty about the Niners in a second. The Eagles are letting Hurts down. And that somehow this narrative about this team, about this quarterback, about this situation, I don't feel like we're kind of seeing the forest through the trees in the correct way. Because when I look at that game yesterday, what I saw was an offensive coordinator who once again was in over his head, who seemed to have no idea once again how to scheme wide open receivers, easy throws, easy plays to sustain drives. Kevin Patullo likely coached his last game as an offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's a failure from Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni already went through this song and dance before. A couple years ago when they lost the guy Shane Steichen, and they promoted from within, and it was a disaster. And then they had to go get Kellen Moore, and they won a Super Bowl last year. And now we're going through the same song and dance again. Nick Sirianni didn't learn from his previous lesson of maybe promoting from within isn't the best way to go about building the best offense. Maybe it's the best way about going about ensuring that we have a team that is still able to play at an elite level where we don't have an offensive coordinator who's trying to learn on the fly how to do this job. That's on the coach. It is not Jalen Hurts' fault that his offensive coordinator is inept. It is not Jalen Hurts' fault that his offensive coordinator can't find a way to make easy throws, easy completions. It's not his fault that they can't unleash Saquon Barkley the way they did last year. That's not on Jalen Hurts. So that was a failure from Nick Sirianni from that standpoint. I also think that's a failure, and I know this is kind of like sacrilegious to say because he's such a great general manager and everyone wants to kiss his butt and blah, 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 blah. It's also a failure by Howie Roseman. It is. Because Howie Roseman, at the end of the day, we know he really runs the show. He has his fingertips on this team and everything that happens more so than maybe any other general manager / president in the entire NFL. He is extremely hands-on with everything that happens with his team. So the fact that he also allowed Nick Sirianni twice to make horrendous hires when you talk about offensive coordinator coming off of a Super Bowl appearance, that's on the general manager too. So Howie Roseman, you got to get the smoke as well. That also was a failure on his part. That is not on Jalen Hurts. And another thing that's not on Jalen Hurts are wide receivers making a combined $60 million they can't catch. I mean, A.J. Brown, bro, like, this guy would not shut up about all the issues the Eagles had all season, even when they were winning. The Eagles were having success. They were winning games. They've been obviously one of the top teams in the NFL the last 2 years. And A.J. Brown still will come out and say, you know what, I'm not getting the ball. You know what, the offense isn't looking the way it's supposed to look. You know what? Blah, 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 blah. He always seemed to be complaining about something. And some people wanted to defend A.J. Brown, and even I at times could understand it because the Eagles were not playing championship football. They were not playing with consistent offense. They were not throwing the ball the way they needed to. So, on one hand, you kind of could understand what A.J. Brown was saying in terms of his concerns with the team. But what would happen is then he would have a good game. He'd get a lot of touches, whether they win or lose. And a lot of the time, they lose these games when he's getting all these touches. And then he's quiet. Then he has nothing to say. Then he's not complaining about, oh, you know what, we got to find a way to win football games. None of that stuff matters as long as he's getting his touches. So he's been complaining for the last 2 years. You come into this game last night, and this is where A.J. Brown's supposed to make his money. This is where A.J. Brown is supposed to show that he's a top-notch receiver. This is really where the big dogs come out to play. Playoffs, right? This is where you make your name. And the guy's dropping the ball all over the place. Crucial drop in the last drive, earlier drop in the game. Nick Sirianni, and I know he got a lot of heat for it, and I don't think he necessarily had the greatest temperament in this game. But, I mean, he's looking at A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's complaining to the refs, and he's like, yo, get off the effing field, bro. And then they're getting into it. A.J. Brown wants to get into it with the coach. Like, enough with this guy. Like, I think if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, sometimes, I don't want to say winning Super Bowl is the worst thing that can happen to you because that's obviously ridiculous. But I think one of the things that was unfortunate about the Eagles winning a Super Bowl was that they had to bring this guy back. they couldn't justify, even though we saw all of these warning signs last year, that maybe this guy won't be very happy here, given how we run this team, given how this offense is, given the kind of quarterback Hurts is. Maybe it's best we get rid of him, and fans will be upset, people complain, but we can get over this, right? It's Howie Roseman. Like, if anybody's gonna have some rope to give, anybody's gonna get the benefit of the doubt, it's gonna be him. But because they won that Super Bowl, I think they felt like they had no choice but to bring him back. They knew he was a malcontent, they knew he was a problem, but they were like, well, are we gonna get rid of our number one receiver after we just won a Super Bowl? Like, that looks crazy. So let's try to run it back. Let's hope that he's not as annoying as he was this year. And that was a disaster. That was a terrible decision. He was more annoying than he was last year, and he was a worse player than he was last year. And last night, he's making these crucial drops. Devontae Smith also, I know it wasn't the easiest catch in the world, but he gets the ball over across the middle. You're making $25 to $30 million a year. You got to make that catch too, man. You got to make that catch too. So, is the quarterback perfect? No. Is he a superstar? No. I do think he's a winner. I do think that in the right offense, in the right circumstances, he absolutely can be a star player for sure. Not a superstar, but a star. I just feel like as we go into this offseason, we talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, I think the narrative about this team has to shift. It cannot continue to be just about we can't do anything because of the limitations of our quarterback. We have all these other issues. Malcontent wide receivers who then don't show up in big games, coaching staff that is clueless. Like, the quarterbacks can't overcome that. like if this was, I feel like if this was any other team, I'll be honest, if this was the Chargers, and this was Justin Herbert, we would, because we do it all the time, we're going to probably talk about it today, we look at his circumstances and say, well, yeah, maybe he's not playing the best, but look at all this other stuff that's happening. With Jalen Hurts, he gets none of that rope. It's always all his fault. And it could be the nature of Philadelphia for sure. But I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing everything that happens that's wrong with the Eagles is Jalen Hurts' fault. Not after last night. Last night, that was a terrible performance by the offensive play calling. That was a terrible performance by the receivers. Dallas Goedert seemed to be the only guy that really was ready to play. He showed up. That was not, this is a Jalen Hurts referendum game at all. I will say, it was perhaps a referendum game on Kyle Shanahan, who, if you've listened to me on radio or on Maggie and Perloff, or obviously it's on radio, but you listen to my own radio shows or listen to me on Maggie and Perloff, you've heard me criticize Kyle Shanahan for the things that I think most people that criticize him talk about, right? Coaches tight in big games, is giving up big leads, has not maybe always done the most with the most amount of talent when he's had opportunities to win Super Bowls. These are things that we talk about with Kyle Shanahan that all seem fair. With that being said, he's done a phenomenal coaching job this year, and he's a phenomenal coach. What I hate about commentary, what I hate about doing this sometimes is this idea that if you criticize someone who's great, it just means that you're a hater, or you don't acknowledge that the guy's really great at his job. Like, we all know Kyle Shanahan is a great play caller. We all know he's a very good to great head coach, but he has had shortcomings that have cost him winning championships. But when I watched that game last night, and I've watched this 49ers this season, there's no way this team can win a Super Bowl. I want to make that clear. Now, you lose George Kittle to Achilles injury. I got to say, the reverberating calf has become the most unwelcome sight in sports. And, you see a guy go down, you don't know what happened, and they show that replay, and you see that calf just, pulsate, in that, violent way. You know exactly now what happened. It's crazy that it's taken us up until Kevin Durant and 2019 NBA Finals. We had Achilles injuries long before then. It seemed like whenever we watched them, we just saw guys go down, and we just were like, all right, I guess it seems like something's wrong. I guess he tore his Achilles, and that was it. Now, we always now know when a guy is torn his Achilles because we have this close-up, maybe it's these high-res cameras, I don't know. But now, all of a sudden, we see these injuries, and we know exactly what happened, and it's brutal, and it's devastating, and I feel terrible for George Kittle, who I felt was having a phenomenal season in and out of the lineup due to injury, and he really was their main target. So this team, I don't think can win a Super Bowl without him. I don't know if they could have won a Super Bowl with him, given all the injuries that they had. But what I will say is I think Kyle Shanahan, he may be a better coach when he actually doesn't have the most talent, if that makes sense. We think about the first Super Bowl when he had Jimmy Garoppolo. We think about the time when they lost the Rams in the NFC Championship game. That was a team that nobody expected to go far, and they beat Aaron Rodgers in the snow. And then they were up against the Rams in the NFC title game. They had obviously won multiple games to get to that point. Kyle Shanahan kind of reminds me of they used to say this about Mike D'Antoni as well. That like Mike D'Antoni didn't love like coaching stars. Like when he was able to coach guys that just like played his system and listened to him. Like he did very well. Like give him 1 star and then just a bunch of role guys. Like when he had Steve Nash, or even when he had like Jeremy Lin as just his guy, or when it was just Amari Stoudemire with the Knicks. Like it was one guy and a bunch of role players, and they all just fit into his system. He's a great coach. If he's got to coach a Kobe Bryant or Carmelo Anthony, disaster, not going to work. And I feel like for some reason Kyle Shanahan reminds me of that as well, where I think because he doesn't have a number 1 type receiver like a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk, who may demand the ball, who may cause issues. If your Deebo may choke out a kicker every now and then, because he doesn't have all the luxuries of having great talent. I just think it opens up his mind as a coach. I think he's able to play his system a little more maybe to the T. He's not going to do anything that's like out of the ordinary, or the Shanahan model works. We've seen this now in the NFL. The Shanahan offense, if you run it correctly, you can produce wins, you can produce points. And I think when you lose some of those star elements where you're not trying to feed a bunch of people, you can Kyle Shanahan can coach his most pure game. That's number 1. Number 2, I also think it allows Kyle Shanahan to coach a little more free. Because like I said before, one of his issues has been I think he's gotten tight in games and it's forced him to make bad decisions, dumb decisions. You don't see that as much with this Kyle Shanahan team this year. And you didn't see it in that game yesterday. And the biggest thing was the Juwan Jennings touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey, which the Eagles didn't see coming. Was an awesome play call. Obviously, a great play by Jennings, great play by McCaffrey. But there's no way Kyle Shanahan's calling that play if he has all of his weapons at his disposal. And what may happen because of that is he may end up playing a little more tight, may end up playing a little more conservative, which is what we've seen from Kyle Shanahan. Or he may fall in love with getting the ball to a certain player. Like, because he has to be more creative in certain aspects of the game in order to get big plays, you get Juwan Jennings throwing the ball to Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown. So Kyle Shanahan, man, he deserves his flowers today. If I can find my round of applause, I'm going to give him a round of applause. If I can find it, I don't even know where it is. Oh, here we go. Shout out to Kyle Shanahan. Shout out to Kyle Shanahan. Phenomenal job. Phenomenal win for the 49ers again. I don't look at this team as a team that could win a Super Bowl at all. I do find this game coming up against the Seahawks very interesting, simply because the fact that these teams played so recently and they are very familiar with each other. But at a certain point, the war of attrition you would think would catch up to a team like San Francisco that's gone through so much. But they deserve a ton of credit, man. That was a gutsy win. I feel like there were a lot of wins that almost felt spiritual. That felt like, if you're a football fan and you love the sport and you love competition, like seeing a team battling through the adversity the 49ers are battling and come away with a win against the defending champs on the road in one of the toughest places to play in Philadelphia. That's almost like a spiritual experience. That's something that anybody could relate to, unless I guess you're a team that hates, you're a Rams fan or you're a Seahawks fan or one of these people that hate the 49ers. That was an impressive win, and shout out to the crew. They did a great job. Let's get to some other games from this week. I want to talk about this Bills game. Also yesterday, Josh Allen and Bills survived Jaguars. I think that's a fair way to put it. Bills, to me, listen, I don't think that there is a team, like an obvious team to beat in the NFL right now, because like I said, there's all I watched on Sunday and Saturday were imperfect teams playing imperfect football. So anybody who's going to sit there after they watch those games and tell you, oh, after I watch those games, I know who the definitive favorite is, they don't know what they're talking about. They're lying. They're lying. Because everybody had moments where they looked awful. Everybody had moments where they looked like they were going to give a game up. Everybody had moments where then they made incredible plays, and then they rose up and like, wow, that was amazing, right? So nobody who could have watched those games yesterday could sit there and tell you, oh, you know what? I now definitively know what's going to happen with this playoffs given what they saw over the weekend. What I can say is Josh Allen's the best player left in the playoffs. That's obvious. And I think if you had to put your money on anybody in the AFC to get out, it's got to be Josh Allen, because yesterday's game was a microcosm of kind of the Josh Allen experience. And if you're a Bills fan, the experience of watching Josh Allen is that the Bills won because they had Josh Allen and the other team did it. And that was just the result. That was literally, this game can be summed up. There's a lot of things to talk about with this one. I can go into when we're going to talk about the decision at the end of the game in terms of scoring the touchdown. We can talk about Trevor Lawrence. We're going to get all to that. But the short of it, if I had to give you one sentence of what happened in this game, is like, the Bills won because they had Josh Allen and the other team did not. Let's go to the next game. The guys, he's Superman. What can I say? I mean, I think that's a tough assignment. I know that's not known to be like some hostile environment in Jacksonville, but that stadium was loud. You could hear it from the crowd, from the TV. Jim Nantz kept mentioning it. By the way, before we get anything more into this game, we got to do something about Tony Romo. I know we're a polarized country. We're very split on a lot of things. I feel like there's one thing we can unite on is I think we've had enough of Tony Romo. That game yesterday with him, the guy was out of control in the first half. He's yelling about all different types of things. Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Oh, what's this guy doing? Is this a touchdown? Oh, is this they call it back? He's just talking. He's not like it doesn't seem to be any stream of consciousness with what he's saying. He is terrible. I'm sorry. It's crazy because he came in onto the scene and he was good at one point. I don't know anybody who watches these games and hears someone on a call can say he is good at this point anymore. It's just manic. It's a manic broadcast. It's distracting. And I've just had enough. I do not want any more of this Tony Romo experience. I feel like as Americans or as football fans, we should all be able to unite and say, hey, we got to cut this up. We got to find another answer, or he's got to change his style. Like, I don't want guys being fired. I just got fired, right? I just was at a state. I don't want to see people lose their job. I'm not about that. But he can't be calling the biggest games every week being that manic on the broadcast, especially sitting next to a legend like Jim Nantz. And I thought the rules expert, whose name I'm losing right now, who I think also does. I think he's probably the best one of these guys. He's stepping all over him. He's stepping over Jim Nantz, which is nonsense. He's just saying it's almost like he doesn't know what to say sometimes, and he just says whatever comes out of his brain, or like he's one of those guys that doesn't know to like, hey, maybe think before you speak, or let's think, like, play the situation out in your head of what you're watching before just jumping on the air and saying, wait a minute, I think they called this play back, when there's no indication that they're calling a touchdown back. And then he's asking the replay guy, hey, the officiating, replay guy, like, oh, hey, the guy's talking. What did he say? I'm like, what am I listening to? Is this a football game, or is this like, I don't know, some guy in the cockpit of a fighter jet? Like, it was just like he was just saying random stuff. He acted as if he wasn't on air at times. That was awful. And shout out to my good friend Maggie Gray. She's been on this train since I met her. She's been saying forever that Tony Romo, in part because, listen, I'm a Jets fan. Now I watch all the football games, obviously. I'm a Jets fan. We don't get a lot of Jim Nantz and Tony Romo because our team is usually out of it by mid-October. So it's not like I'm subjected to having to watch them every week. Like, if I don't watch the biggest game of that week for whatever reason, or if I'm watching the Jets instead of that game, then I miss them. But because she's a Bills fan, and because the Bills are one of the premier teams in the NFL, and they draw ratings, and they have a big star, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz do a lot of their games. So she has been for years saying that Tony Romo's out of control. And I don't think that I necessarily disagreed with her. I thought that she was wrong. But really watching yesterday, it was like, man, that was bad. This is now a problem. And I don't know if the league can step in. I don't know what's going to happen, but they got to figure that out. But anyway, get back to the game. Josh Allen was phenomenal, man. He's Superman. He's beat up. And that's going to be a big question for the Bills. If you have any questions about whether or not they can get this run to the Super Bowl, can he survive this? Because the Superman act can only go on as long as his body holds up. And he took some brutal hits. That shot of his knee when he scored that touchdown on the QB sneak and the way his knee got bent back. That was an ugly scene. I'm surprised he was okay, and I say okay in kind of question marks because he finished the game, but who knows what kind of damage he may have done to that knee. He's obviously dealing with a foot issue. He just was dealing. He hit his hand on a helmet, and it seemed like, I don't know if his throwing was different because I feel like Jim Nantz is trying to nail Tony down on like what are you seeing from his throwing, and Tony was just saying again nonsense, just saying oh yeah it looked great but actually not so much, or I don't know. I'm like, all right man, like I wish I could just Jim Nantz just call the game by himself, just do like Joey Styles back in the day on ECW, just calling play-by-play and doing his own color. That would have been better than yesterday. But anyway, the guy is going through a bunch of physical. He's going through a physical toll. And that was a tough assignment going into Jacksonville. The crowd was loud. That defense is physical. That defense is ferocious. And they won that game because he's Josh. And when you watch, when you think about the rest of this playoff run for the Buffalo Bills, if he stays upright, that's going to be the trump card that the Chiefs had. The Chiefs had that trump card with Patrick Mahomes. They had this guy who, regardless of what was happening in a game, you felt like you could win because you had Mahomes and they didn't. And he was always the best player on the field. And I say this a bunch, and shout out to my cousin James. He's my dad's cousin, but obviously my cousin as well. He had this saying when it came to watching the 90s Bulls and Jordan and these playoff series. And he'd always say, the reason why the Bulls won, in short, similar to how I said the reason why the Bills won this game because they had Josh Allen, you didn't. His thing was the reason why the Bulls would win those series, those tough series against the Knicks, the Pacers, obviously the NBA Final Series, Suns, whatever series you want to bring up. They won because at the end of the day, you knew Jordan was going to outplay their star. Didn't matter who their star was. It could have been Patrick Ewing, could have been Karl Malone, could have been Reggie Miller, could have been Gary Payton, could have been Charles Barkley. It didn't matter who it was. Jordan was going to outplay your star, and stars win the playoffs, so therefore the Bulls always won. And you could bet on the Bulls to win because that was always going to happen. That is basically what I think the Chiefs' experience has been with Patrick Mahomes. And now that he is not in these playoffs because the Chiefs were a mid-team besides having Patrick Mahomes, that I think could very well be the experience of Josh Allen this year. Is Josh Allen is probably going to outplay the other team's quarterback. And he certainly outplayed Trevor Lawrence yesterday. And on Trevor Lawrence, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the guy is a bum. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's, a top 25. He's not even a top 25 quarterback or any of these like hyperbolic statements about who he is as a football player. He's a good player. He's a good quarterback. He has great physical tools. All the nine. I just feel like now that we're in, I don't even know what year this is for him. I guess year 5, I want to say. And I mean, in theory, you got to have a 15-year career, so we're not even halfway there. But let's say we're in year 5 with him, which I think is about right. Can you visualize that guy playing clean enough football to beat 3 or 4 good teams in a row? Because when I think about Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, when I think about teams that can win championships, that is what is required. Can Trevor Lawrence on any given night outplay a Patrick Mahomes like we saw on Monday Night Football earlier this year? Maybe on any given day, maybe he randomly plays better than Josh Allen the way he didn't yesterday. But could that happen in every? Yeah, he has these amazing physical tools. He can make some throws that no guys can make. He's a great athlete. He's strong. He's tough. He has a lot of things you would love for a quarterback. But there's just something missing when it comes to the application of playing consistent football and championship level football that I don't see from the guy. And I would have a hard time betting on the Jaguars winning a championship with him because I don't think that you're going to get 3 or 4 clean Trevor Lawrence games in a row in order for you to win a championship. That's what it's going to take. And what we've seen from him in the playoffs is you're not going to get that. The first game he ever played, he threw 4 picks in the half, right? They won, which again speaks to the Trevor Lawrence experience that he could have 4 picks in the half and then play great in the second half and win the game. But like he's an uneven. He just isn't consistent, and to me, a lot of it comes from he just doesn't. He's gonna make that big mistake that you can't make. He's gonna make that key turnover. He's gonna miss that read. He may miss that throw. Just not gonna make that play that needs to happen, or he's gonna make the wrong play that can't happen at some point in the game. And when you watch Josh Allen's game, Josh Allen's stats, I don't think are gonna jump out at you. He didn't throw for 400 yards. He didn't throw for 5 touchdowns. But you saw how efficient the Bills' offense was. His completion percentage, it probably was in the high 60s, 70%. Like he started 9 for 10. And it wasn't like he threw at that time he had thrown for 300, 200 yards, but he was still moving the sticks. He was still keeping the offense on schedule. And even if they weren't able to maybe get a pass on the field, he was able to at least keep the drive going, or at least put them in a position where they could punt and flip the field. He's just playing winning football. He's knowing that when it's time for me to win the game, like it was at the end, I put on my Superman cape and I win the game. When it's time for me to get that first down or get that touchdown, okay, I put my Superman cape on. But when it's time for me to not make the mistake, when it's time for me to just keep us afloat, keep us ahead of the sticks, that means hitting the dump off, hitting this simple completion, not being loose with the football, turning over. And this has not always been the Josh Allen experience, by the way. Josh Allen also used to be like this sometimes too. And is there growth to happen with Trevor Lawrence? Maybe. I just feel like, people are going to say this is year one under Liam Cohen, who I think, did a phenomenal job, obviously, as head coach of the Jaguars. And say this is year one, give him a break. We said that about Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson came in and, it was like, all right, Trevor Lawrence, much better than obviously what he had at Urban Meyer. It looks like the future is bright. Still, some turnovers, still some things that work on. But hey, it's only year one. It'll get better. And it kind of didn't. I just think this may be who Trevor Lawrence is. I think he may be a guy who is talented, who could make all the throws, who can put up some big numbers, who can take your team to the playoffs. I think he's probably, a guy who, I think with Jacksonville, if he's your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years, you'll probably be in the playoffs a ton. You may make a run here and there. Are you winning a Super Bowl with the way he plays? I find that hard to believe. You got to play clean football 3 or 4 games in a row against great teams. That's what it's going to take. Like, you had a game at home against a good team, but a team that we've seen is beatable in the playoffs. Like, if there's anything we know about the Buffalo Bills story, that we've seen them lose in the postseason. So it's not like this. They were playing the Chiefs, so they were playing, the 90s Cowboys. Like, that's a game you hope that your franchise quarterback that you drafted number 1 would have played better in. And he throws a pick early in the game that cost him, and he throws a pick late in the game where a guy's draped all over. Trey White is draped all over the receiver. Like, it was not surprising how that game ended. By the way, last thing I want to say on the Jaguars-Bills game. Sean McDermott's a problem. And if you were going to bet against the Bills, if you're saying, all right, all that stuff you said about Josh Allen is good, but that guy's still coaching, I would say fair. Because I don't know what it is with him. The game seemed clear to me. It seemed obvious to me. You get to a position where you have the ball. You have this QB sneak where, Josh almost went for a touchdown from 10 yards away, which is insane. I still don't know how that happened. He's Josh Allen, I guess. But, you have a 10-yard QB sneak that gets you to the goal line. The Jaguars now are out of timeouts. You have 3. And you now control the clock to the point where you may be able to score basically with almost no time left. You have all your timeouts. I think maybe they called one. They had to call one because there was a 10-second run. No, the Jaguars called their final one because there was a 10-second run. But you had at least 2 timeouts, maybe 3. With 1 minute and change left, why the hell aren't you kneeing the ball for a play? Let the clock go down to 40 seconds. Maybe even kneel it again, let it go down to 10, and then just QB sneak in there. It was very obvious that you were getting into the end zone. The Jaguars had not stopped the QB sneak all day. And you just ran a QB sneak for 10 yards. The Jaguars weren't stopping. And it was mind-boggling to me. Like, I'm like, all right, well, the Jaguars know they got to let them score here, but the Bills are smart. They won't score here. They'll just, take a knee right at the 1-yard line and just keep it there until they're ready to score so they can wind this clock down And this guy tells Josh Allen to go into the end zone. And by the way, I think Josh has got to be smart too. I think he's got to know the game and situation as well, being like, it doesn't make sense for me to run into the end zone here. But like, that could have cost them. If Trevor Lawrence wasn't on the other side, that probably cost the game. Because Trevor Lawrence, again, always going to cough it up when you need him not to. But, I mean, the process of that was idiotic. There's no other way to describe it. That was awful coaching. And you feel great if you're a Bills fan. You won a huge game on the road. And now you got an opportunity to keep the season going. But in a tough environment in Denver, Sean McDermott scared me to death. And I know he does scare Bills fans to death. But that was coaching malpractice. And somehow it's going to get lost in the shuffle in part because they won. And because we'll be talking about how great Josh is and how great Trevor is. But Sean McDermott also a major problem for the Buffalo Bills. And that coaching was unbelievable to me. I want to actually, we can stay on Sunday, but I want to hold the Chargers debacle a little bit because I don't know if it's worth the first hour of this show. I think we got to get to what I think was the game of the weekend, the thriller in Chicago. Absolute thriller, man. Caleb Williams leading the Bears comeback win over the Packers. Sorry, not the Vikings. Other division rival in the NFC North. The Packers are, in my opinion, at least for me, I guess it matters, it's only my opinion, they are the most frustrating team to watch in the NFL. When it looks good, it looks Super Bowl level good. They got clearly a ton of talent. They had a quarterback who can sling it. They have now a defense that now knows what it's doing because they have a good defense coordinator in Jeff Hafley. When it looks the way it looked in the first 3 drives of that game, they score touchdown, and bang, it's 21-3, and it looks like this game's already over. Like, you'd look at that and say, wow, man, how does this team only have 9 wins? This team should, they should have 12 wins. This team should be the best team in the NFL. Like, but you know what? Hey, they're hot now. Let's see what's going to happen here. But they still play immature. They just don't play championship caliber football. And it's something I've been saying for years. I remember a couple years ago, the Packers, for a lot of folks, were becoming the in vogue team to pick to win a Super Bowl. And a couple years ago, they had a couple injuries, but then they got red hot, and they were heading into I believe it was a Thanksgiving Day game against the Dolphins at home, I want to say. And I did a radio show. It might have been Maggie Pro while filling in. But I did a radio show, and I did a segment that did upset some Packers fans. But I said that as good as they're playing, they still make mistakes. They still do things, even in these wins, that make me feel like they're not buttoned up enough to win a title. And there's not going to be a bigger microcosm of what I was talking about than this loss they took to the Bears. Because you watch those first 3 drives, and you watch how smooth and seamless their offense is, and you watch how much they had the Bears in the chokehold defensively, and you're thinking, all right, well, this might be a blowout. Like, this doesn't look competitive at all. And then you see what the Packers do every single time they take a lead. They take their foot off the gas. They stop throwing the ball down the field. Defense starts to lax a little bit. And they just allowed the Bears to get back in the game. And I say the defense lax, that's usually the term. But really, to be honest, I don't even want to give the defense that much smoke because I don't know how many 4th down stops they had, how many times they forced the Bears into field goals. Like, the Packers offense was basically just begging the Bears to take this game back. And I haven't necessarily been a big fire LaFleur guy. That hasn't always been my thing. That guy's got to go. That you can't lose a game like that as the offensive guru, as the offensive head coach. When you go up 21-3, you score 3 touchdowns, 2 of them on long drives where the Bears look like they have no answer. You go into half telling, I believe Melissa Stark, telling whoever it was, apologies if it wasn't Melissa. It might have been Hartang, I think her name is. Again, apologies for the name mishap. It was an Amazon game, I believe. But you go into halftime where you're telling the sideline reporter, oh yeah, we know this is a 60-minute game with this team. We know we got to keep our foot on the gas, and we know we got to be ready for what's going to come in the second half. and then you're not ready. It was just pure lip service. Like if I was a Packer fan, I heard him say that, and I watched how he coached that second half. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you gaslighting me? You did the exact same thing we see every single time we talk about these Packer losses and these Packer blown leads and Packer football under Matt LaFleur. I mean, bro's got to go. I really feel like like this is a time where you watch them, and it feels like they have not gotten better since Aaron Rodgers got traded. Think about like when Aaron Rodgers got traded, and it was like, you know what? It's like they still have some talent. Jordan Love's is a young, talented quarterback. He's gonna have some growing pains, but like year one, okay, we saw some signs. Say, okay, yeah, once they get this thing going, once they get some experience, once they learn how to win, this is gonna get better. Packer fans, I ask you, is it getting better? Does it look any better? Does it look any better today as we sit? What is it now? 3-4 years after Aaron Rodgers has been gone, they look like the same damn team. And don't give me Michael Parsons. They were up 21-3. They had only given up 6 points through 3 quarters. Defense was fine. Defense had nothing to do with this loss. The offense just stopped playing football. And you knew they stopped playing football because then when they realized, oh shoot, we might lose this game, let's open up the offense again. Let's start throwing in Romeo Dobbs. Let's make some plays for Matthew Golden, who you couldn't unlock for an entire season. You're an offensive head coach. You got a guy who runs a 4.3, who's the number one receiver coming out of the draft essentially. You drafted him high, finally taking a quarterback or wide receiver. You couldn't unlock him until this game. But okay, you unlock him in this game. He's making big plays. You go away from him for 3 quarters. And then you go back to him in the 4th. He makes a spectacular play that you thought was going to end it. And unfortunately didn't, because now you allowed yourself to get into a game. I love the saying, stupid games, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like, yeah, the defense then gave up once you got up by 11 late. But now Caleb Williams has gotten hot. Now the building's involved. Now the team believes they can win. Like, the game is totally flipped. Now you're asking your defense to play against a red-hot offense that now has some confidence, now has some hope because you allowed them to keep getting the ball over and over and over again. You were literally doing nothing on offense. So I think that this is the time for Matt LaFleur to go. We'll talk a little bit about the coaching cycle a little bit later. But I think that this is the end for him. I mean, it should be. Will it be? I don't know. But I find it hard today to really justify bringing him back. I will say one more thing. And I put this on Twitter as well. I want to make sure I can kind of fully explain because, Twitter, you can't. Well, I'm now premium, so I guess I can explain. I have more characters, but whatever. I don't want to get into Elon, that clown. But typically, it's not the greatest form to explain everything because it's short form kind of thoughts. The Packers also need an attitude adjuster on offense. And I don't mean John Cena. You can't see me. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they need an ass kicker. They need someone to bring some juice, someone to bring some fire. Now, Tucker Kraft might be that guy, and maybe he just wasn't there, and not having him there, hurt. But I'm watching the Bears struggle. And I didn't know what to make of it while it was happening. I kind of didn't love it. But Caleb Williams is a madman. He's yelling at everybody. He's frustrated. And I think if I was, someone talking to him this week, if I'm Ben Johnson, if I'm, maybe his coaches or whatever, I say, hey, listen, emotional game, tensions run high. We won the game, and you did your job. Just remind yourself that your team is kind of going to reflect how you are as a leader. So if it seems like you're out of control of your emotions, it may force them to be out of control with their emotions. So I don't know if I loved everything, but what I will say was that guy was trying to wake people up. Receivers were making mistakes. The first pick he threw, the receiver ran the wrong route. Guys weren't making plays. He wasn't playing great either, but it was clear how bad he wanted it. It was clear that he was trying to rev this team up. I'm not saying I need that from Jordan Love. I'm not saying I necessarily even want that from Jordan Love. That's not who he is. He can't be a fake leader. I don't want him doing something that's out of his character. That would be dumb. I do think if it's not going to be him, they need somebody else. For example, Patrick Mahomes is pretty fiery already, so he can do that. But in Kansas City, Travis Kelce brings the juice. He'll knock over his head coach. He'll knock a guy over. He'll yell at somebody. He'll slam him. He'll do something when things aren't going right to kind of let the team know, hey, we're getting too comfortable. We're getting too cute. We need to wake up. Who is that guy on the Packers? you're watching them. I know it's not a camera on the sideline every single time, but typically they're able to pick up a lot of this stuff. Like, I'm watching them go 3 and out, 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 and it looks like they don't care. They're just like, all right, well, and I don't know if they just thought the game was in the bag, so they're just like, well, Caleb looks so bad, the Bears offense looks so bad, and our defense is locking them up so much that who cares if we're going 3 and out? We're just gonna have to we'll just run this clock out basically and win. But I thought the lack of urgency from from Green Bay, comes from that. Like, I think they got a lot of nice guys. They seem to be a great group of guys, a great, easy team to root for in that regard. But I think they need the guy I kept thinking about. I'm not saying they should get him or that he's the perfect person, but I feel like they need like a Stephon Diggs effect. Like, they need somebody just to shake it up. Somebody who, yeah, maybe he may run too hot, maybe he may give you some problems, but like, I can't imagine Stephon Diggs acting like being okay with how that offense was going. I can't imagine Travis Kelce being okay with how that offense was going in the second half. Like, somebody's getting yelled at. Somebody's getting their jersey grabbed. Somebody's getting their helmet grabbed. Somebody's saying, hey, what is going on, guys? We're going to blow this. And you're not getting that from the head coach, and you're not getting that from the quarterback. And I don't see really anybody from that receiving core or that, that running back room. I don't see anybody really. The offensive line, I don't see, like, they don't have a guy like that. I think they were missing that. I think that's one of the reasons why I think they played so casual and why they played so cool. For the Bears, real quickly, I'll just say, this was their Super Bowl. Like, I think most football fans knew this was a big game and knew how important it was. But, I mean, I don't think it could be emphasized enough how much they had to win this game. Like, I think about, obviously I'm a big wrestling fan. And, again, with this show, there's going to be a lot of crossover. There's going to be obviously, Monday after Sunday, we're going to talk a lot of sports. But there'll be plenty of shows where we talk a lot more wrestling, a lot more hip-hop, a lot more other stuff. But I'm a wrestling fan, and obviously one of the most famous WrestleMania main events was Rock Austin 2 in Houston. And, the famous promo with, it's my way or the highway. That Linkin Park, this Limp Bizkit song with The Rock and all the clips. It's an iconic promotional video to promote this main event match. And, one of the promos that Austin cuts during this video is him telling Rock, I don't want to beat you, Rock. I need to beat you. I almost feel like that was the Bears. Like, the Bears, did they want to win? Yeah, of course they wanted to win. But I think just for the psyche of the fan base, of the organization, of everybody in that locker room, they had to win this game. They brought Caleb Williams in because he was supposed to be the chosen one, the first quarterback outside of Sid Luckman to actually do anything for the Bears offensively in terms of putting up big numbers. The first superstar quarterback for the Bears. They got him at number 1. And if there was a head coaching draft that happened last year, like there was an NFL draft 2 years ago when they got Caleb Williams, number 1 pick would have went to Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson. He would have been the number 1 pick, chosen one. They got this guy because he was going to unlock Bears football, Bears offense in a way that we had not seen before. There's a clip. I don't remember the gentleman's name. I don't want to make up his name, so I don't want to say the wrong name. But there was a guy, the Bears, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do a phenomenal post-game show after games. If they did it, I hope they do, because I would have loved to have seen the show yesterday. But I remember when they lost to the Packers a couple years ago. It was the last game of the season. This was like, we'll see if Matt Eberflus keeps his job. He ended up keeping his job. They were like, oh, if they win, he may keep his job because they've played well down the stretch. Justin Fields was playing okay. And, they were playing the Packers. They were playing against Jordan Love. And they lost the game. They lost kind of handily. They didn't get blown out. But, Jordan Love was great. He's making all the throws. He's doing the Jordan Love thing. It's the same old story with the Packers beating the Bears. And one of their commentators, he made it very simple. He said, you know what I want? I want what Green Bay has. I want that. I want a quarterback who can drop back and deliver the football. I want a quarterback who can go back and make the big plays. I want a quarterback who can go up and put together drives. Why can't we get that? Why can't the Bears get that? Why don't I ever have that? Packers seem to always have that. They always seem to get it, and we can't, and it pisses me off. And I love that clip because to me, it's like, it's such a microcosm of, I think, the Bears-Packers dynamic. It's just that, like, the Bears have been trying to win a Super Bowl with one hand tied behind their back because they've been doing it with quarterbacks who clearly weren't going to be good enough to win a Super Bowl, with offenses that weren't explosive enough, where you were constantly saying, well, we just build the new version of the 85 Bears defense, then maybe we can win another Super Bowl. Which is like, okay, what are the odds you're going to build a defense that great again? As great, and then they built great defenses since, and they still haven't been able to win a title. So, like, everything that the Packers represent, not just as a rival, but also what the Bears haven't had, that they now have hope that they have now. They think they have a coach like what people thought of Matt LaFleur or Mike McCarthy or Mike Holmgren, an offensive coach who can move the ball down the field and actually put up points. They think they have a quarterback like Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, right? All that gets thrown out the window if you lose that game 21-9, which is what it looked like was going to happen. Like if all that hope, all those dreams, all that stuff happens, if they go out there and they lose that game just like every Bears-Packers big game goes, how we always can expect it, then all that gets thrown out the window. You say, oh, here we go, same old Bears, same old nonsense. And I think that the organization starts to feel like, man, I guess Aaron Rodgers just transferred over his ownership of this organization right over to Jordan Love. And just like Brett Favre had inherited it and gave it to Aaron Rodgers. Like you feel like it's going to be the same old story over and over again. This was their Super Bowl. They had to find a way to win that game. I don't know if I guess they were the better team. They beat them 2 out of 3. I mean, they're the better team, I guess. But like, they feel like they're the better team. They won the division. They had them at home. You just had to find a way to win. You had to find a way to win. They won. It's amazing for the organization. We hear all these, what's it called? These like locker room speeches where you got, the coach giving an emotional speech and stuff, and the players getting the game balls and stuff. And like, I always think they're cool. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I'm a sucker for NFL films. I love it. But sometimes for other folks, like it's like, okay, it's eyewash. We see this over and over again. That Bears, again, I talked about a spiritual experience these playoffs were. That Bears locker room felt like a spiritual experience watching them celebrate. Like Ben Johnson getting up being like, I effing hate the Bears. I wanted to grab the clip, but it wasn't as audible as I would have liked. But like, I hate the Bears, F them. Like, and the team's going crazy, and you see the emotional speeches from Ben Johnson to the team, and then Caleb getting the game ball, and then Caleb giving the game ball to Ben Johnson, talking about how much this man means to me and how much this means to me as a person and as an organization to beat the Packers. Like, it was an awesome scene. Obviously not awesome if you're a cheesehead, but anybody else who has no rooting interest, it was awesome to see the Bears, who have seen this organization torment them year after year after year for what is a true blue rivalry. We complain all the time in the NFL about how, and in sports, about how they're not really real rivalries anymore. You cannot say that about Bears, Packers. With how that locker room acted, how they played, that is a real rivalry. It was cool to see. That team also ain't winning a title. That's why I keep saying that was their Super Bowl. The magic act is going to end at some point. You can't keep playing god-awful football for 3 quarters and then hoping that you have a miracle come up in the 4th. That's just not sustainable. Now, it's great that they have that in their bag that they can win that way. Can they win another game that way? Like, can they beat San Francisco? Can they beat LA in that way? LA, we'll talk about later, like, they coughed it up a bunch. So, yeah, maybe they beat LA. But, again, similar to what I was talking about with Trevor Lawrence, you got to beat 4 good teams. Okay, you beat 1 good team. Now you got to beat another. Okay, if you win this week, next week you got to beat another good team. All right, if you win the following week, now you got to beat not probably a good team, a great team. A team that's getting the Super Bowl is great. Can you do that playing 3 terrible quarters and then Caleb Williams being Superman in the 4th? No, you're not going to be able to do that for 3 more games against good to great teams. But that's not. I don't mean that as disrespect, or I mean that as like a way to kind of poo-poo what happened. It was an awesome win. But yeah, I think that this is not necessarily all that indicative of the Bears being able to win a championship. But I think for that game, it doesn't matter. That they had to win that game. Like that game was their Super Bowl. This is one of those things where we say, oh, moral victory, my ass. They that was their Super Bowl. If they lost that game, that would have been a disastrous way to go into the offseason. And for that fan base, for that organization, you gotta feel good as a Bears fan today because you got that W. Let's get back to last night, and I'll quickly talk about the Herbert debacle that was. I don't want to hear any more excuses for Justin Herbert. I'm tired of it. Does he have excuses? Yeah. I have eyes. I'm watching him get his brain beaten in because he has no support, no offensive line, no support. Like I see all that, but at the same time, we've seen other quarterbacks deal with all different other type of issues. The guys that we consider great, right? The great quarterbacks. We've seen them deal with mishaps on the offensive line or injuries on the mishaps on the line or missing key players and still find ways to be great. Hell, even at 41 years old, Aaron Rodgers just last week, missing DK Metcalf, really the only like serious wide receiving target they have in Pittsburgh. You think, all right, well, that means the Steelers offense is going to be grinded to a halt. There's nothing they can do. And then Aaron Rodgers turns back the clock and puts on a performance of the ages in the fourth quarter. Like, quarterbacks are able to overcome their circumstances sometimes. I'm not asking them to do it all the time. Just sometimes. This guy never does it. He never is able to overcome his circumstances in the biggest games. I'm not talking about like a random regular season game week 8. Yeah, I've seen him play great and have those big moments. But playoffs on the line, a chance to go to the playoffs, win or go home situations. All right, the situation is not completely ideal. This guy just doesn't get it done. He doesn't get it done, and I don't hear any excuses. What I keep saying about Justin Herbert is what I keep saying. He guy's a great talent. I cannot say he's a great player yet. Can he become a great player? Will he get through? He's got a lot of the. It's funny because ironically he has a lot of the intangibles you would think would say yes, right? Like he's really tough. He took that beating like a man, and he's playing injured already with a broken hand. Like the guy is tough. At times he's made clutch throws. Like you've seen some stuff from him where you say, okay, this guy he may have it, but he just doesn't put it together in these moments. But similar to Jalen Hurts, I will shift this a little bit off of Herbert because I can talk about Herbert to the cows go home, but the story is the same with him. He doesn't come up when they need him, and I'm sorry, I don't want to hear the excuses. They won 11 games. They had these injuries all season. They still won 11 games. Your offense shouldn't look that inept. So Herbert deserves his lion's share of the blame that he usually gets for these games. I think Jim Harbaugh also has to look in the mirror as well. Similar to Jalen Hurts, where this conversation only is about Jalen Hurts, and it seems like somehow like everyone else kind of gets like they get to be put on easy street. Jim Harbaugh needs to look in the mirror about how he's coaching Justin Herbert, because I'm someone who actually they say listening to press conferences is lame and you never get anything out of them and whatever. For part of my job for a long time working at Infinity was I had no choice but to listen to him because I had to cut sound bites from him, so I listened to a lot of these press conferences. So I listened to a lot of Jim Harbaugh since he's been the head coach of the Chargers, and he talks about Justin Herbert like he's a fan. He talks about him like he's like one of these people on X, Herbert fan 2552 from the 619 X account, right? Like almost like a bot account. Like Justin Herbert is a god. He's a godly quarterback. He's gonna be one of the he's the greatest of all time. He's saying all this stuff, and to some degree, I like it for Justin Herbert's confidence. Like I think, like Herbert's kind of an understated guy. I think he's a confident guy, but I think having someone in his corner who's talking about how great he is and how ill he is, I think it actually is probably beneficial. But I wonder if Harbaugh is taking some of that Herbert can do no wrong mindset into how he's actually coaching. Because what I see is him coaching nothing like the way he coached in San Francisco. When Harbaugh was coaching in San Francisco, he seemed to always try to find answers for how to simplify the game for the quarterback. He arrived in San Francisco. Alex Smith was a disaster. He had 11 zillion coordinators in like 2 years. Like, he was a broken quarterback. And Harbaugh went there and said, we're going to coach him to make simple plays. We're going to run a simple offense. And we're going to accentuate his strengths. And we may not have the best team around him, but we have a good enough team with my system that we can win. And then the same thing with Colin Kaepernick. It was the same thing. Like, all right, he's not the most perfect quarterback, but the guy's athletic. We'll simplify. We'll just change the playbook. Forget about what I run. We'll just be a zone read team, and we'll simplify the playbook. We'll add new plays, and we'll make sure this quarterback is in the perfect position to be successful, where we're giving him the answers, not him seeking the answers. Does it look like Jim Harbaugh is getting Herbert any answers? It feels like he's like, Justin Herbert, you're on your own, pal. You're the greatest of all time. You'll figure this thing out. When he can't figure it out. He can't. This two years in a row. Like, 2 years in a row, I'm watching the Chargers get absolutely bullied. And that's not who Jim Harbaugh teams are supposed to be. Last year, when everyone was running to pick the Chargers to beat the Texans, they got bullied by the Texans. Herbert got beat up. He threw 4 picks, and it was a laugher. And then last night, they're getting beat up by a young Patriots team, and Herbert looks a mess, and he's got no answers. And I just feel like with this head coach, I'm wondering if I don't know if they need a new offensive play caller or a new system. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like they deal with injuries and they deal with mess, and it looks like Brandon Staley's coaching them. Like, how did that team look any different last night than when Brandon Staley was the head coach when they made the playoffs against the Jaguars? Or last year when they got blown up by the Texans. They look the same to me. It's Justin Herbert. Go find the answers. Go figure it out on your own. And I'm going to try to coach this defense up and hope that we can keep us in the game. That's the plan. There is no plan. And what from the coaching staff to the front office, they need to support this guy a lot more. He's not Josh Allen. He's not. It doesn't matter what's around him. He's going to find a way to win. He's just not that guy. He's not. It doesn't mean he can't win a Super Bowl. It doesn't mean he can't be great. But they're not giving him any answers, and it's forcing him to do it on his own. And when you're playing playoff football against top defenses, against top teams in win-or-go-home situations, that's what it's going to look like every time. So until Jim Harbaugh changes how he coaches, until the Chargers change their approach as a front office, it's going to always look like this. It's not going to change. It's going to look the same way every single year. And if they get another coach, if Jim Harbaugh retires or does whatever, and whatever, there's a coaching change, and someone else is coaching Justin Herbert, if they have the same approach that him and Brandon Staley had, it's going to look the exact same thing with them too. So I think that Harbaugh needs to get some smoke too. I know, like, Brandon Staley was like the Antichrist, and he had all these. He was a bad head coach. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he was great. But again, I'm watching this team last night. I'm like, this looks like how it looked with Brandon Staley. This doesn't look any better. Jim Harbaugh is a highly respected head coach. It should look much better than this. You shouldn't be getting just annihilated by a Patriots team, by the way, that didn't do a lot. It wasn't like the Patriots were moving the ball up and down the field. Like, to me, this almost looked more like a tune-up game for the Patriots. Like, this was a great practice for Drake May. This was like basically practice. Because he was allowed to make mistakes. He could turn the ball over basically by his own goal line. He could throw terrible picks. Like, none of that stuff matters because the other team can't score. They had no recourse on how to move the ball. So this was a great learning lesson, a great learning experience for Drake May, which is not what playoff football is supposed to be. I cannot give you a bigger indictment of what I think about the Chargers than to tell you that game was essentially a tune-up game and a learning experience for the other quarterback. But that's what it was. The Chargers were never a threat to score more than 3 or 6 points in that game. None. So as long as they scored one touchdown, the game was going to be over, which is what happened. They finally scored a touchdown. Drake May settled into the game. He finally figured out what was going on. He made some plays, and he did a good job down the stretch. But I think a lot of the Patriots is like TBD on how you feel about them. I mean, their defense is physical. Their defense is tough. We know it is. Mike Vrabel and that coaching staff put together a great plan against a team that, again, it feels like they're not even getting coached on the other side. But in terms of, do I feel great about the Patriots not moving forward? I gotta see more. I gotta see more of that. Drake May did not look like the MVP Drake May we saw during the regular season. If he plays like that, they're not gonna win a Super Bowl for sure. They may get bounced in the next round if he plays like that again. I do. Also, I didn't have a headline for this, but I would just put my regular wild card recap. Just quickly on the Rams game. Rams survived scare 34-31 over the Panthers. I'll say this real quickly. This is a great game. I don't mean to poo-poo. It's the Panthers, so whatever. But this is a phenomenal game. This was a classic. Like, this was an awesome game. If it weren't for the Packers, the Rams would probably be the most frustrating team to watch in the NFL for me. Because if you would have told me when they were up 14-0, or they were 17-7, This was going to end up being a nail biter where you need Matthew Stafford to pull a rabbit out of his hat for them to steal a game on the road to the Panthers. I would have said there's no way that's happening. I'm watching the game. The Panthers can't move the ball. They're turning the ball over. The Rams look like they can get whatever they want. The Panthers seem to think that Puka Nacua was just a guy. Like they just weren't covering him in the first quarter. I'm like, hello, have they been watching? Not the playoffs, the NFL this year? They watching this guy's career. The guy's best receiver in the NFL, and they're just letting him run free. So I thought the Panthers looked like a mess. I was like, oh man, this is gonna get ugly. But the Rams play with their food. Their defense, for some reason, it just doesn't have the teeth it should have. You know, there was a time when you look at the Rams and how they play defense, and I think you would feel like, okay, like, say whatever you want to say about all the other stuff. They are a team that they can get after the passer. They can make big plays, and they are a force when they get going. That doesn't look like the Rams defense right now. In spots, they get after the passer. In spots, they find ways to make plays. In spots, they do X, Y, and Z. But it still feels like they're still like a long ways away from really being the team that they want to be. It still feels like they're lollygagging through big parts of this game. I don't know. I was very unimpressed with the Rams in this one. Matthew Stafford, I'm hoping he's okay with he had the issue, obviously, with the hand injury, and we'll see if that ends up being a problem moving forward. I hope it's not, because the last thing you want is injuries to be an issue. But for the Rams, I just, you know, for them to get that cold on offense for so long, Matthew Stafford at one point, I think, was 2 for 13 in the game. That's alarming. And it's becoming a sign that we are seeing from these Rams over and over and over again, where it just feels like they're not playing consistent football. It feels like they can let teams in the game. It feels like they can let their foot off the gas. So that's a team that gave them problems in the regular season. They beat them, obviously. The Panthers beat the Rams in the regular season. So I understand that's, it wasn't maybe the gimme that people think it is when you see that kind of matchup. But I was disappointed in what I saw from the Rams. I thought that they were going to come out and look way better than they did, and that was really, kind of just a C+ performance. Now, could you go to Chicago and play that way and win? Honestly, probably not. That's probably why it's a little concerning, because the Bears are this weird team where, like, yeah, if you don't play all 4 quarters, you're going to lose. Like, they're going to get you out of here. So that could be a problem. Like, I don't know if you can just say, okay, we're going to just play, again, just nonsense football and we'll be fine in the end. That's not how this is going to work with them. I think that if you're if you're a Rams fan, I would be very concerned about how they finished that game. That was terrible. I mean, finished, but how the Panthers came back in the game. The finish was great. Stafford made an incredible throw. Parkinson, an incredible catch. But that was a game where I kind of wanted to see the Rams show that the game during the regular season was a fluke, and show that the Seahawks game was a fluke and how they ended the season was a fluke. And they didn't do that. It feels like the season for the Rams flipped in that fourth quarter in Seattle when all that weird stuff happened. That team looked like they were on their pathway to go to the Super Bowl. The team that then took the field that fourth quarter and has played since doesn't look like that. So it sets up a very interesting matchup. It should be a fun weekend next weekend. These are the games that are set up for next weekend. You got there. So you got Niners, Seahawks Saturday, Buffalo Bills, Broncos Saturday. Then your Sunday games, you're going to have Rams going to the Bears. And then the winner of tonight's game, Texans, Patriots, also on Sunday. So it should be a fun divisional round. You got tonight, obviously, like I said, the Texans, Steelers. I'm interested in this one. I do start to feel like my biggest question with this game tonight is all forgotten if the Steelers win? That's my big question, really maybe my only main question. Is all forgotten if the Steelers win? Or is Tomlin back on the hot seat if they lose? I kind of got a feeling that like last week was like a pseudo Super Bowl for the Steelers too. I think everyone knew, like, everyone's job was on the line. Everyone knew. It was kind of like in wrestling, it was kind of like one of those, what we call it, loser goes home, loser leaves town matches. That's what it felt like in the old school territories. It was like, oh, loser leaves town, and that was a way for somebody to know they're getting fired, or they were moving on to bigger and better things. That matchup felt like, with the Ravens, a loser leaves town matchup, which it was, because the loser was the Ravens and John Harbaugh got fired. So somebody's gonna get fired after that game if someone lost. So someone left town, and that was Harbaugh. And they survived that, and I thought the celebration, the euphoria, just the it felt like the Steelers got a lot of their swagger back just from surviving that game. Which, by the way, they survived. Like, if it wasn't for Luke missing not a chip shot, but in today's day, it feels like a chip shot at 44 yards, then everything, the conversation today is totally different about the Steelers and where they're at. So they won that game. So the question becomes, is that going to be like the wind behind their sails that pushes them forward to something special? Or was everything kind of geared up to that game, and they come in today, and could they lay an egg? I think that they could. I think there are a lot of victory laps that were happening that I didn't love. I want you to hear this from Aaron Rodgers, who continues to talk about whenever things go well. This is why I know he just won his Super Bowl. Because earlier in the year, his Super Bowl was beating the Jets. And he's talking about, oh, yeah, the way they sent me home and blah, 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 blah. And then they win that game last week, and this is how he's talking about the Jets yet again.
One thing I really love, and it's kind of the antithesis of where I was, is there's not really any leaks in the boat. Every year you have difficulties and adversity, both on the field and off the field. And to go through a season like this and to be able to focus on football and not have a lot of other little bullshit out there has been really nice.
I mean, all right, bro. We can focus on football now instead of other BS, as if you weren't trying to be a vice president, as if you weren't talking to Pat McAfee for 2 hours a day about Epstein list and various different conspiracies. Like, this guy made it everything but football with the New York Jets, and now he's like, oh, it's football here now. That's why we're good. All right, whatever, bro. But like, I hear stuff like that, and I'm like, all right, man. All right, bro. Like, you're gonna make this. This is where you're going with this. This is how you feel. Like, now, oh, we've had, we're doing so great because there's no leaks. All right, let's talk about the leaks when Will Anderson's on your ass, right? Let's talk about the leaks when Danielle Hunter's on your ass, right? Like, you still got games to play, man. Like, you're playing against a team that, albeit offensively, is very up and down. I don't expect them to put up a lot of points today. I think if you're betting, I would bet the under. I don't even know what it is, but I still bet the under. But you're playing against a ferocious team that, when you play the defense this ferocious, they almost knocked your ass out. When you played against the Buffalo Bills and the way they beat you up and battered and bruised you, or when you played the Seahawks this year, when they battered and bruised you earlier this year too, when you played against teams with this profile, it was ugly. So I feel like a lot of these comments about, oh, look at what we did, we've done so much great work and everything. I'm not like, I think a lot of that's smoke and mirrors. I think a lot of that is projection. You still got a game tonight. They got a chance to win. I think it's a pretty, I don't say even matchup. I think that I would favor Texas slightly, but it should be a good match. I think this is going to be a close game. But I think in terms of the Steelers, if they lose, and once again, you have a home game, Tomlin facing an imperfect team, loses to a team that not a lot of people expect to go to the Super Bowl. I actually picked the Texans to go to the Super Bowl, so I'm begging and hoping they find a way to go on a run to the Super Bowl. They certainly have the defense. The offense is a big question mark. If you find a way to lose this game, I think still those question marks about Tomlin are going to come up. I don't think that this is necessarily over. This idea that, oh, well, he won last week, therefore all is right with the world. They lose. It's an ugly performance here, and you get DK Metcalf back and you still have no answers in the playoffs. I don't know if everything is all copacetic. I know the fans won't like it. The fans were very happy about that game, but that was not the fan Super Bowl last week. They wanted to win that game. They obviously wanted to make the playoffs, but they are about finally making a run in the postseason. That is all they care about. So if they go into this game and they find a way to lose and go home in the wild card round yet again, this time with a home game, that would be terrible. So I'm excited to see what this one is. I'm picking the Texans. I'm going to pick them. I'm going to say score like 19-17. I think it's going to be a close game. But I think the Texans defense is going to force the Steelers into some problems. I think they're going to force some turnovers. I think they're going to hit Aaron Rodgers. And it's only going to take one or two plays to beat the Steelers defense. That's a little up and down. The good news for the Steelers is the Texans don't run the ball that great. the Texans, and the Steelers issues that they can't run the ball. But what we saw last week was the Steelers can give up big plays. And CJ can just make a couple of big plays, which is all I think you'll need. I think they find a way to win this one on the road. It's an exciting NFL weekend, though, man. Shout out to everybody who's been listening. We're at my eyes 70 viewers here live here on day one of 40 days and 40 nights. I'm gonna be doing this every day, every weekday. So catch me every weekday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 8 a.m. We started live today, 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll be live again, 6 p.m. Eastern, all days, Monday through Friday. And there will be some select days too. Like this is not going to be just like, oh, only like there'll be some special shows maybe on a weekend. Like if it makes sense to do a show Super Bowl day or something like that. Like there may be some pop-up weekend shows. So, follow me on social media. I got the ticker down there. You can follow all of our stuff there. So EJ_Stewart, you'll find me on X. Action EJ is where you'll find me on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok as well. Action EJ, find me there. Make sure also you follow the social media accounts of this channel, New Generation Media. Again, for those who are jumping in right now, this is New Generation Media. For those who obviously are following me, you know me, EJ Stewart, perhaps from the Maggie and Perlaw Show, perhaps from WFAN. This is my creative playground that I do with my brothers. Shout out to my guy Shamari Stewart. I know he's hurting right now because he's a big Packers fan, and he was not a Fire LaFleur guy until Saturday night. He was crashing out in the text, and I'm actually hoping maybe he could be a guest later on tonight. I know it's kind of breaking news maybe to him. He's watching, but I may text him and say, hey, you want to get on the show later tonight? Talk about Matt LaFleur. But my brother Shamari, my brother Kendall, we all do shows here on the channel. Hero Talk is our Marvel, DC superhero show where we talk about all the things happening in the superhero world. And that stuff's going to blend into this new show that I'm doing here, 40 Days, 40 Nights. That's our show, Hero Talk. We got Sports Talk where we talk sports. We've been a little bit on the back burner because I've been doing stuff with Maggie and Pro from WFAN. So I think there's going to be probably a new iteration of Sports Talk coming to you soon. Right now, this is the number one venture we have right here, obviously, is that I'm doing with sports is 40 Days, 40 Nights. We'll see what comes up after the 40 Days, 40 Nights are up. And then Imperial Broadcast as well is on our podcast stream. By the way, again, this is the YouTube channel. The podcast, you can follow all the audio of these shows. You can follow that New Generation Podcast Network. If you search New Generation Podcast Network, you'll be able to find all of our audio podcasts as well. That's where we do all these shows. Hero Talk, Sports Talk, Imperial Broadcast. Imperial Broadcast is a Star Wars podcast that my brothers Shamari and Kendall co-host. I'm not on that one because I can't do... and I'm only one person. I'm not like Pat McAfee or Stephen A. Smith, where they've cloned me and put me in 5 different spots so I can do 8 different jobs. That's not how this works. I'm a human being, so I'm not able to do that one. I do hop on every now and then, but they do a phenomenal Star Wars podcast. So if you're a Star Wars fan, definitely make sure you check that out. Imperial Broadcast is on there. So that's all on our podcast channel. You can find that New Generation Podcast Network. You search that on any platform you got. Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, whatever you got, you can find us on there. That's where you'll find those podcasts. Awesome shows. Also, I launched a wrestling show as well, off the script, with Lucas Goldman, who's a former writer for WWE, and we talk wrestling as well. He's also been really busy. He's been doing some fun work outside of obviously the podcast, so we paused it a little bit, but that's gonna be revving up later this month as well to get closer to Royal Rumble time. So we do a wrestling podcast, sports podcast, superhero stuff, a lot of fun stuff here, man. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's going to be a big year for New Generation Media, man. Really trying to make this one be perhaps our biggest year yet. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media, here on YouTube. Follow us on social media. New Generation Pod is where you find us on X. New Generation Podcast is where you find us on Instagram. And again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Actually, I realized, and I wanted to make sure I do this, I want to make sure we get to some of these comments because we're in the comments section. I read comments. So like I always say when I host on WFAN, I'm ducking no smoke. So if you hear something on the podcast you want to say, or you hear something that you want to chime in on, I'm all ears. I definitely want to hit you guys up, and actually I could put up some of these comments. I want to post this guy. Shout out to my guy John Lean up here. Let's see if you can see that. I'm actually close out my other one so you can see this joint. Let me close this joint. Here we go. Well, there we go. So John Lean here, posting time to dump Brown. Dude's too damn whiny for dropping 2 balls. Yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned earlier. I said that, a lot of the conversation has been about Jalen Hurts and everything he does wrong, and now it's all his fault. I thought the game was really more about how the team has failed Jalen Hurts. It's not to say that he's innocent in all this. Like, oh, none of this is his fault, and like, he is an imperfect quarterback. We see his flaws, right? But the guy's making $30+ million. He complains all the time, and he's a malcontent. And in the biggest game where you think, all right, this is the moment where A.J. Brown shows his worth, shows why he's worth all the trouble. He's dropping 2 balls, one of them absolutely crucial in the last drive. It just can't happen. He got bailed out because Dallas Goedert made a catch on the next play. But no, that was definitely, I think, a situation where you look at where the Eagles are. I think it's time to move on from A.J. Brown. Totally agree with that. So shout out to John Lean. Also, want to put John Lee here as well because he mentioned something earlier that I mentioned about Tony Romo. What happened to Romo? He used to be decent. I agree. I used to like Tony Romo. I said earlier on the stream, Tony Romo has become unlistenable. Like, we have to do something about this. Like, we cannot we cannot have a manic commentator calling super important sporting events. I know, like, obviously there's a lot more things more important than sports, but like, you know what I mean? People who would kill to be in a position of Tony Romo, and this guy is just like yelling nonsense. Like, Tony Romo yesterday was almost like a parody of what I would expect like SNL to do. Like, if they were doing Tony Romo impersonation, I would expect it to sound and look like that. That's what Tony Romo was during the game yesterday. A good game, a game that needed everybody's attention and needed someone to be on their P's and Q's. And he's unlistenable. He's yelling, "Oh, what's going on here? What's that guy saying?" Like, I'm like, God, can you be quiet? Jim Nantz is trying to call a football game, and you're just yelling about anything you see on the field, man. Like, and then when Nantz trying to ask him questions, like, "Hey, what are you seeing from Josh Allen's hand?" I mean, I'm not, and he has nothing to say. And then he's just again saying nonsense, saying gibberish. I mean, this guy's making another guy making $30 million a year to do this. Come on, man. Enough. We've had enough of Tony Romo. CBS, figure it out. NFL, figure it out. Tell him, hey, listen, man, you got to get in the booth. You got to practice. Or we got to move you to a lower team. I don't know. I cannot have the biggest games of the season being called by this guy acting like that. It was ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. So I agree with John Lean. That's 2 for 2 for John Lean. And finally, I'll go to my guy, Dexter Henry, man. Shout out to Dexter Henry. I was just on New York Post Sports yesterday talking Jets. As sad as that always is, talking Jets. Dexter always trying to find a way to call me during, like, bad times. So, Jets got number 2 pick in the draft. And Dante Moore has, a game where he threw a pick 6 in the first half, and his team is losing by 40 in the third quarter. And he's like, hey, you want to talk about the Jets quarterback situation? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm coming on. But I love my guy Dex, man. He's an awesome dude. He's been on the Maggie and Perloff show. Filling in for Polish at times, and he's a phenomenal dude. And he's obviously been my update anchor as well when I've been on fan during my shifts. Awesome dude, awesome work he does with New York Sports. So shout out to him. He's on the stream. Says I 100% agree on the Packers being the most frustrating team to watch in the NFL. Not sure how LaFleur survives that collapse. I don't think he will. I really feel like this is going to be the end for him. And actually, is a awesome segue. Awesome segue. So I want to get to next. Actually, I didn't want to get to this next, but I'll get to it anyway. I want to talk about this coaching carousel. Coaching carousel is heating up, man. And I think one of the things that stood out was what happened with the Packers and what happened with LaFleur and how they lost and how bad it was. I'm not actually on my phone, so apologies if I hope nobody got fired or anything. Let me go on my phone and make sure. This is the great thing about live streaming is like this is the kind of thing where you can just look up stuff. So, okay, this was 52 minutes ago from Schefter. Packers are not expected to work out a deal and they're coming to keep LaFleur. So, LaFleur apparently going to stay, according to this tweet from Adam Schefter. I guess shout out to Adam Schefter. What was interesting was there was this post that he put up about John Harbaugh being linked to the Packers, and that John Harbaugh's agent is the son of a former president of the Packers, and that John Harbaugh has this affinity for the Midwest because of Michigan ties, and they got this love for Harbaugh, and that he won the job, that it'd probably be his. That it appears that it may not be happening, but I actually didn't really like this at all. I didn't like this fit. this idea of Harbaugh being linked to the Packers. I think everything that I'm complaining about with LaFleur has basically been what I've seen from John Harbaugh teams. Lack of maturity, seem to always take their foot off the gas, seem to not be able to show up in the biggest games. Like that's been John Harbaugh. Like John Harbaugh's a good coaching candidate. I think for a lot of these teams that want him, I think they should definitely want him. But I don't know like what he brings to the table. If what he brings to the table is what I'm looking for the Packers. The Packers are a weird team. I don't know if it's necessarily that they even need a big name to replace LaFleur. I just think they just need a change. They just need a change of energy, a change of scenery. I don't know what a guy who's had such a big track record of coming up small in the biggest moments makes the most sense. So I wasn't too keen on that. I guess why they would be interested in John Harbaugh. Obviously, he's been a highly successful NFL head coach, but I don't love that at all as a fit. So I'm not really in on that. But apparently, again, according to Adam Schefter, that is not going to be the situation where Harbaugh won't go there, because it appears that Matt LaFleur is on his way back. That they're working on a deal to keep him. He's on a 1-year deal right now. Why he would get an extension off of that appearance, after that performance, I have no idea. I could not give you any answer to that. Nothing. I have nothing for that. But so I don't know. I mean, it's kind of surprising to me. Again, I'm just reading this that he's apparently they're hoping to work out a deal. I don't know if it's one of those things where they're going to give him like a fake extension, where they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you an extension for 1 year and like no money. So then he kind of like mutually parts ways. Like we've seen this happen before. Maybe that's the same thing we see happen here. I'm not 100% sure. But again, that performance does not seem like one that would make sense to me about how I would do things. I want to bring your attention to something else as well. So I'm going to try to see, hopefully I do this right, and hopefully this works out. Because this is, again, live stream. This is a new thing, so obviously it's going to be, hopefully not too many hiccups. So far, so good. Nothing crazy yet. But I do want to bring your attention to this again, following this coaching situation. So I want to show you guys something. That's my desktop that shows all this other stuff. So that sucks that I can't fix this. Google Chrome. That's what I wanted to show you guys. Here you go. Here you go. That's what I wanted to show you. So this is what Schefter is saying, by the way, right now. So you got Mike McDaniel. He is currently interviewing with the Cleveland Browns. McDaniel was fired by the Dolphins last week. Kind of surprisingly, I did not expect to see Mike McDaniel get fired. It sounded like he was going to be safe given everything that had happened. Because of the fact that they because of the fact that they didn't fire him after the season was over. It seemed like Ross was really committed to trying to make this Mike McDaniel thing work for some reason. I'm not sure why he was so committed to that, but he seemed like he was. He seemed like he really wanted to make this thing happen. And then he randomly fires him. Way past Black Monday. So you're like, oh my God, what's going on here? And people start to put the tea leaves. Stephen Ross, Michigan guy. John Harbaugh, Michigan guy. Stephen Ross, extremely cutthroat, extremely opportunistic in trying to get big stars to Miami. We saw the ropes he was trying to pull to tank for Tua, to bring in Tom Brady, like all thanks to the lawsuit from Brian Flores. So I thought, oh, well, clearly this is the move for Harbaugh. Maybe they got some word that Harbaugh would be interested. Schefter's been saying there is no, like, they didn't fire McDaniel because of Jim Harbaugh, because they talked to Jim Harbaugh. Who knows what's true and what's not true. Schefter himself said that there were teams that had NFL head coaches that reached out to Harbaugh to see if they were interested. There were 7 teams that had reached out, and there were 7 openings, including the Ravens. So I bet that at least one team who had a head coach, one team that had a head coach had reached out to him at that point. Then he ended up coming out and actually saying it was 2 teams. So 5 teams with openings reached out to him, and then 2 teams that didn't have openings reached out to him. But then it's not the Dolphins, who have all these Michigan ties. All right, whatever. But anyway, McDaniel, he's going to be a guy that's going to be considered for some head coaching jobs. I would not hire him as a head coach. I don't think that what I saw from him those last 2 years with Miami would make me feel good about him as a head coach at this point. I think as an offensive coordinator, I'd be more intrigued. I think if you're Philadelphia, I think he's someone that I would be looking at possibly to be their new offensive coordinator. The problem the Eagles are going to have, though, is every time, if they keep getting the hot offensive coordinator, that guy is always going to be up for head coaching jobs. Like Mike McDaniel was a fired head coach who's a former offensive coordinator, and he's still up for head coaching jobs. Because offense rules the day when it comes to coaching searches. Like teams want NFL coaches who are offensive guys. So if you're the Eagles, just like what happened to Kellen Moore, and that's probably what Nick Sirianni is trying to avoid, is if you keep hiring like the hottest name on the block to be your offensive coordinator, then Mike McDaniel comes into Philly with all the talent they have. They put up all these numbers. The next year, he's got a different shine on him. And he gets a head coaching job, and now you need to find another offensive coordinator. They kind of found a perfect storm with Vic Fangio, a guy who was like multiple-time failed head coach. A guy who's never going to get another head coaching job, but we know is a good defensive coordinator, and is like obviously like from the area. So like he's not going to leave. They need to find somebody like that. Like I don't know who that guy is, but like I would be a little concerned about like hiring McDaniel. The other guy I would consider, but I also have the same concern, is Cliff Kingsbury, who I was stunned got fired by the Commanders. Like they called it a kind of like a parting of ways, but it was the reporting seemed to be that like Dan Quinn kind of was done with Cliff, so he said, "Hey, listen, I'm done with you." And Cliff's like, "Well, I want to explore opportunities anyway," so they just parted ways. I don't know why they want to lose Cliff Kingsbury. To me, like he was great for Jaden Daniels. He was great for what the Commanders were doing. They had a lot of injuries last year, so that's why, or this year, so that's why things fell apart. I didn't think he was a problem. But to me, if I'm the Eagles, I think that he actually would make the most sense. Because when you think about Jalen Hurts' best success as a quarterback, it was at Oklahoma. It was when he was running a Lincoln Riley offense. And if you think of Lincoln Riley offenses, they are actually a lot more similar to what you see from Cliff Kingsbury. They kind of come from a similar tree, the air raid tree. I would rather get him into that kind of offense than even a Mike McDaniel who's running like a Shanahan deal, which Jalen Hurts could run probably. He's mobile. He can roll out of the pocket. Definitely that running game. Saquon Barkley probably could use a boost, and maybe that would help him. So I get it with McDaniel, but I actually think the better fit would be Kingsbury. Now, the problem is Kingsbury going to get hired as a head coach? I'm not as convinced as I was before all this happened. If you would have told me 2 weeks ago, I would say, well, Cliff is going to be a head coach, so it doesn't matter. Now, with John Harbaugh in the mix, I'm still curious about what's going to happen with Florida the next 2 days. Let's see what happens. And let's see what happens in Pittsburgh. Like, there are going to be some coaches with some big names that are going to be available. His name doesn't have the shine I think maybe had early on. So if he becomes available as an OC potentially, he knows the division very well. Obviously, I think Cliff would be a nice choice as well if they opt out. But this head coaching search is going to be interesting. I keep saying for the Giants, man. I know everyone seems really high on Kevin Stefanski, and there was that lip reading from Jackson Dart where he's on the sideline of the college football game that I want to get to before I get out of here. I know I'm running along here. There's no set time for 40 Days, 40 Nights, which is not pleasing my fiance, by the way. Twice my fiance the week is that. So how long are these shows going to be? And I was like, I don't know, like maybe 2 hours. And then she kind of like grimaced. And I'm like, Andrea, like I worked on a show where it was a 4-hour show every day. I host radio shows where they're sometimes 5 hours. So 2 hours is nothing. That's why I was like, I wonder how I'm going to feel. I haven't hosted, like, obviously, a live stream in a while. And I haven't hosted in the fan in 2026 yet. So I thought, I wonder how I feel. I mean, I feel like I can go for another 3 hours. That's how fun this has been. And this has been an awesome ride. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're at 84 live viewers now, which is awesome, man. Like, I think this is only going to continue to grow. Really excited for what we got going on here at New Generation. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, New Generation Media. Make sure you, of course, follow me on X, EJ_Stewart, Action EJ on Instagram. But, yeah, there's no set time. I probably want to keep it around 2 hours. If I go longer, that's okay. If I go under, I think that's okay. Maybe there'll be some short shows, of course, as well. May save some stuff for later tonight. I do want to get into the CFP as well. I think I want to get to that maybe before we get out of here. But maybe later tonight we'll talk some hot stuff. I do want to get to that. But Giants, Jackson Dart saying, oh, it looks like it's going to be either Stefanski or Harbaugh. I like Stefanski. Let me be clear. I've actually defended Stefanski a lot. I think that he is actually a very, very good NFL head coach. I'm surprised everyone likes him as much as I do, and it's kind of making me now concerned. Like, oh, maybe are we all getting this wrong? Because like they did just come off like a 4-win season. For the Giants, I've always thought Mike McCarthy made more sense. Mike McCarthy's been a more successful head coach than Kevin Stefanski. Maybe you could argue he's had more talent, better situations, maybe. But I've always thought that McCarthy made the most sense. He knows how to build a winning program. He's been a long-time NFL head coach, and I think when it comes to teaching Jackson Dart how to play quarterback the right way, I feel most comfortable with Mike McCarthy than almost anybody that's available, including Kevin Stefanski, who, I'm sorry, like I've watched the Baker Mayfield thing kind of blow up. I watched Shador and Dylan Gabriel this year. I wasn't all that impressed. I know he's been a good offensive coordinator in the past, but I'm like, am I sure that like he's going to be able to coach Jackson Dart up? I'm not like convinced of that based on the Browns offenses I'm seeing. I think, to me, I Kevin Stefanski more as a head coach than like an offensive play caller. I don't look at him in that regard. I think Kevin Stefanski, I think he handles his job correctly in terms of like managing controversies. He's had to manage Deshaun Watson debacle, whether bringing him in or benching him or him not getting hurt. Like he's managed a lot over there. He's dealt with a lot of crap. And the players seem to play for him. And he knows how to coach the team that he has, and it's become a defensive-led team. And I think that's something that I really admire him as a head coach. I don't know if that's what the Giants need. I'm not sure if that's what all these other teams need. So I'm sorry that everyone seems to want him. Like, I think he would be a great fit in Miami. Like, I think Miami, needs a coach that can lean on their defense. Who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be. They may be going with a guy who's either young or maybe even a veteran who's replacing Tua. They need, I think, somebody who's going to bring a level of stability. So I really like him in Miami. I like him for other spots. I don't love him as much for the Giants. He would be a little bit lower on my list than he's been on for most folks. But before we get out of here, I want to quickly talk about the CFP, man. And again, shout out to everybody who's been listening. It's been a really fun show so far. CFP, Indiana, and Miami, they both advanced to the CFP final. It's been an amazing run if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan like myself. This has been the one thing there are a lot of things I'm mad about, obviously, about not having a full live national platform like I did, thanks to the graciousness of Maggie Gray and Andrew Perloff and Maggie and Perloff show, being able to bring my sensibilities, my fandom, my love, my passion to national audiences. The one thing that's been most regretful during this time, outside of not having a job, has been not being able to talk on national radio as Miami is doing what they are doing. Because make no mistake about it, it has been a really special run for this team. A lot of the stuff we've heard about the ACC, I think we got to kind of put that stuff to bed about, the ACC is a JV league and Miami didn't play nobody and all that stuff. Well, they beat 2 SEC teams and they beat Ohio State, defending national champions. So I think the ACC has shown that they could produce some good football. I think Miami has shown they can play with anybody, and they've had an awesome run here. So shout out to the Canes in that regard. This is going to be a tough assignment. There's no question about it. But I am excited. There's no question about it. That was Michael Irvin, by the way. Michael Irvin, who's like Michael Irvin's kind of become like the like unofficial mascot for the Miami Hurricanes. I know we have Sebastian the Ibis, so he's the official mascot, but then we have Michael Irvin, who's like our other mascot. So he's been on one, as you would expect for something like this. So it's been awesome to see him going crazy during these games. Well, I'll say quickly on Miami and this matchup now coming up with Indiana. Miami beats Ole Miss. It was really this was a true redemption for Carson Beck. Carson Beck, the guy that people kept saying, well, a Cavender twin said this, and a Redditor said that, and a Georgia Forum said this. So therefore, he is this kind of person, this kind of player. And I am someone who actually am really excited about what I've seen from Carson, man. I think that he deserves a ton of credit. I think that he has been really resilient in the face of a lot of real tough criticism. Some of it earned, some of it probably a little over the top. And to see that moment where, in a back and forth game, a great game in the Fiesta Bowl, Miami goes down, and it's up to Carson Beck to do what I think a lot of people thought he could not do, which was play smart, clean football, lead his team down the stretch, and going for the winning touchdown. That's exactly what he did. And he deserves a ton of credit. I think it was a great moment for him and a real moment of redemption for him, given everything he's been through. I will say this, and this is part, again, the live stream experience. I've not done a show during this time of the day. So, obviously, you see the lighting is like bugging out right now because of the sun coming in. And I have blinds here, but I guess they're not as strong as I thought. I'm going to quickly see if I can just adjust these blinds so I can finish the rest of the show out. So just pardon me. This is live stream, baby. This is what you get, man. You're going to get a lot of weird stuff happening. You're going to get some put my mic on. You're gonna get some experimenting happening live because we've never done this before. So this is a first live experience experimenting. I'm gonna try to see if I can fix my blind so that my joint isn't so overexposed. Give me 1 second here. All right, man, we back. Let's see here. Oh, man, that's so much better. Oh, actually, no, it's not as good as I thought it'd be. But I think it is better. We're gonna ride with this for the rest of the way. Regardless. But no, I'm saying, like, I think what Carson did was really better, really awesome for what people said he couldn't do, and the kind of player that people said he was, the person he was. He's been the total opposite for the Canes, man. He's been a leader. He's been everything you'd want. So now they got the ultimate test, man. Fernando Mendoza and the Hoosiers are no joke.
Now the Hoosiers are flipping champs.
Not quite, Fernando. You're not flipping champs just yet. You're flipping Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl champs. That is a weird thing. That, like, we have these playoff games, but, like, they're championships. Like, so, like, every time they win, there's, like, a confetti and there's, like, a podium and there's all this stuff. But it's a playoff game. Like, Mario Cristobal, the first one, I think he was kind of okay with a couple weeks ago against Ohio State. This one, he seemed had to have no interest in. He was yelling at people, like, where are my player? Like, he can't deal with it. Curcinetti always seems like he's just waiting to just destroy the next opponent. So it's kind of weird to see these ticker tape celebrations when they're in the playoffs and they got another game to play in a couple of weeks for a championship. But Fernando Mendoza and Indiana were machined against Oregon. Do I think that for Oregon, is it a situation where you say, oh, you know what, this is a big indictment on Dante Moore? I don't look at it that way. I think this is more, we look closely at Dan Lanning in the light as opposed to Dante Moore in the light. Because this is now 2 years in a row. You had a top team. You play in the playoffs against an elite opponent, and you're just not competitive. Not competitive. Against a team you played already. Like, it's one thing if you're playing against a team that you never played before, or maybe whatever, but, like, you're familiar with this team, they're familiar with you, and your game plan is that terrible that you can't even compete. It was a little concerning. I wasn't impressed at all with Oregon and Dan Lanning. But Indiana's a wagon. Everyone's saying Miami has no shot. I would say pump the brakes on that. To me, when Indiana has faced teams that can put the kind of pressure on the quarterback that Miami can, like Ohio State, we saw Fernando Mendoza can look a lot more human. Like Penn State, all their problems, they can rush the passer. Mendoza looked more human. I think that you're going to see a team look a lot more like how they looked against Ohio State and Penn State than they did against Oregon and Alabama. Teams that could not get a pass rush at all, and Mendoza was just picking them apart. He's awesome. I mean, I've someone who I know for the Jets fans who've watched me on Fan. I've been saying I don't really think he's a great fit for New York City, so I'm not sure how he fits with the Jets. Hard for me to make that case with the way he's playing right now. Now I don't think it's going to matter because I don't think that the Jets fans are going to have an opportunity. I think the Raiders are going to run up to the draft board and make sure that they hand in that card to say, with the number one pick in the draft, Fernando Mendoza going to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's happening. I think he locked that up with that performance in the Peach Bowl. So he's awesome. There's no question about that. But the lack of resistance and the way Oregon just seem to want to give that game up as early as possible. Pick six early on, fumble by your goal line. Like, the game's over at that point. Like, the cart is in before the barn, or whatever that saying is. So that's so I don't think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see a very competitive national championship game. We'll get plenty of preview for the national title game later on, and obviously in the coming days as we get closer and closer. But man, I'm at about the 2-hour mark. I think I'm going to leave it here, man. We'll get to, I know I want to talk some hot stove. We'll get some hot stove stuff a little later. I'll see if I can figure out this damn sun that's coming in. Again, these are the hiccups of doing a live stream and doing things you've never done before. So I got a hiccup of seeing what happens with my blinds. How strong are my blinds? Turns out not that strong at all if there's a hot sun. So, but man, this was awesome, man. Shout out to you guys. We're at 89 viewers. I think that's the most we got to. I haven't been totally up on the broadcast count, so I haven't seen how much it's been for everything. Now we're at 90, so shout out, we got no one more person. So I haven't been on it the whole time, but 90 is definitely the highest number I've seen. So the fact that 90 of you guys, whether you're on X, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on obviously our YouTube and Generation Media, and you found us and you decided to lock into this live stream, greatly appreciated, man. And we're gonna have a lot of fun. I think this was fun already. I had fun doing this show, and I think there's gonna be a lot more fun. If I didn't mention already, there's gonna be a lot of guests. Like, you're gonna hear my conscience, you're gonna hear me yap for 2 hours, but you're also gonna hear a lot of other folks. You're gonna hear folks that you're very familiar for me talking to. Like I said, my brothers. Putting it out there now. I hope that my friends over at Maggie and Perloff, that they'll be willing to come on the show at some point. I'm sure they will. Some people you may be familiar with as well from Infinity and WFAN, and then maybe some people you're not familiar with. People maybe I'm close to, or maybe people who I've been following their work, and I think that they're super dope, and I want to give them a platform as well. Because so many people have given me a platform to show what I can do and show my my talent and my passion and what I love to talk about. I want to give that same opportunity to other folks. So you're gonna be hearing a lot of other folks as well. Again, some characters from Infinity that maybe were behind the glass. You didn't hear from quite as much, but you'll hear from more in a long form platform. So we're gonna have a lot of fun in this road, man. This is day 1 of 40 days, 40 nights. I'm doing 40 days of this, which seems kind of crazy, given I've never done it before, doing 2 live shows a day. But I think with that's gonna come a lot of really fun conversations, really a lot of fun storylines to follow, and a lot of the continued connection with the audience that we grew at Maggie and Perloff, that I've grown on WFAN, that we've grown with New Generation Media. For those who have subscribed, I'm sure there's some long-term subscribers to New Generation Media who are also checking me out this morning as well. So shout out to you guys as well. All those folks who have been riding with us, man. I'm really hopeful that you guys will continue to ride with us and continue with us on this journey. It's gonna be a lot of fun, man. I think that's gonna be the place to leave it. I think we're gonna leave it there, man. I'm gonna hit the outro music. I want to thank y'all for checking out this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Day 1 in the books. We'll have day 2 coming up. Oh, excuse me, not day 2. Day 2 coming up tomorrow morning. Night 2. Well, night 1. Now I'm going crazy, right? Day 1 in the books. Night 1 coming up a little later. Day 2 tomorrow. Again, I'm EJ Stewart. Enjoy the rest of your day.